Hey guys, this is James from Man Tripping and Men Who Blog, and we are here on we've done a lot of alcohol and we've had a lot of fun drinking and we've had a lot of fun having happy hours and that kind of stuff over the past few years. But one of the topics I really wanted to explore more was cars and doing stuff that's not just industry guys talking to each other, but actually talking about topics that are important to you guys from a practical standpoint as well as a fun standpoint. And we're gonna kind of blend those two. I don't know really if minivans are fun, but certainly talking about minivans and the fact that we have this amazing love-hate relationship, I think it's going to be some interesting conversation today because, frankly, I hadn't driven a minivan in ages, but in the past year, I had the opportunity to drive several of them, and I kind of like it. They're way more practical, I think, than three-row SUVs, and they got a lot of storage space, but when I talk to my female friends and a couple of my male friends as well, they're like, "Oh, I would never be seen in a minivan." So rather than me just talking, let's go throw it out to the audience, and we're going to have a conversation with. I didn't intend to do a balance half and half like this, but we got 3 guys and 3 women, plus a awesome engineer from Chrysler who has spent 23 years, I think it is, designing vehicles for the company. And is now the lead engineer, I believe, for the Chrysler Pacifica. So with that being said, kind of go around the horn. You guys all know me. I'm James from Man Tripping. We do men's lifestyle and travel. But, Sujeet, and then we'll go to Phaedra, Laura and Jason, Aaron, and Amelia, Motorhead Mama. And then we'll end up with Brian. So take it off, Sujeet.
What's up, guys? I'm Sujeet from Guys Gab. I run a men's lifestyle site. All about cars. And actually, I think this whole conversation started me and James just kind of talking offline about SUVs and minivans when he had a minivan. And I was like, why in the world are you reviewing a minivan? And then it just kind of became an organic conversation. And fast forward to a month, and here we are talking about it. So excited to participate and see what everyone else thinks.
I'm Phaedra, and I blog at allthingsphaedra.com. I also have a wildly popular YouTube channel called All Things Phaedra, where I do, among other things, cars, travel, and entertainment. And I happen to love SUVs. I actually cover a lot of SUVs. And I have a different opinion about minivans, which I'll be happy to share throughout this session.
Hi, we are Laura,
Jason,
Funk, and we write a lifestyle and parenting blog based in Colorado called We Got the Funk. We are strong SUV and truck people, and there's a minivan sitting in our driveway right now, so we're ready to share.
Now I'm unmuted.
Yay!
So I'm Aaron. I'm a freelance automotive writer. I write for both of those first 2 guys and several other places. I own a minivan. I just had a minivan as a press loan last week, and I am a huge fan of them. I think they're second only to station wagons in awesomeness.
Whoa.
Well, that's a really high bar to clear. So
that's a tough act to follow. I feel like I'm following the Beatles. I'm Amelia Dalgard. I'm also known as Motorhead Mama. I blog on my site. I also have a far less popular YouTube channel. And I write for a few outlets as well. I'm also the president emeritus of the Motor Press Guild. Because I have Mama in the name of my site, I do test drive a lot of minivans as well. And I have a lot of experience with the Chrysler Pacifica and very strong opinions about that and about vans in general. And I'm really right there.
All right, and I'm Brian Swanson. Excited to be here today. I am the chief engineer for the Pacifica programs at Stellantis, which is our new corporate name. I've been with the company for about 23 years, as James said, and excited to come in and talk with you guys about vans. We just launched our new 21 model year. It's a major mid-cycle for us. we bring our new Uconnect 5 system in with that vehicle, as well as an all-wheel drive system. So just a lot of great things going on in the Pacifica minivan world right now. So
Cool. Well, thank you, Brian. And so just to let you guys know that who are watching at home, we are a live interactive show. So if you're watching and you have a question, feel free to comment in whatever medium that you're watching it in, whether that's YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook. And if somehow we miss your comment, we will try to follow up after the stream and answer it as well. But if you ask a question now, we'll be able to bring it live. So with that being said, we definitely seem to have quite a variation in opinions. Phaedra, I'll just pick on you first because you seem to have a strong negative reaction to minivans. Why is that?
So I'm kind of the anti-Aaron in that I grew up in a family of station wagons and I absolutely detested them. And I don't know if it was just, and to be honest, I'm very much about the aesthetics of vehicles. So I always hated station wagons. The one good thing was, as we moved from the 70s to the 80s, I wanted a minivan because it wasn't a station wagon. So we were never a minivan family. However, it's just kind of that stigma. It's like the station wagon stigma. It's the mom car. And I never wanted a mom car. Now, to be fair, I have one kid. He doesn't play sports. So I don't have like the goldfish crackers everywhere and the hockey sticks in the back. So I've never really needed the utility of a minivan. It's just that stigma of it. Now, with that said, some of my complaints about minivans over the years has been the fact that they weren't all-wheel drive. So I like seeing that minivans are shifting and they're becoming more functional. And I will also say that the first minivan to ever change my mind was the Chrysler Pacifica. I had the Pacifica for a week, and one of the things that I loved about it, going back to the utility of it, was the fact that it had those stow and go seats. So even though the idea of taking seats out of a minivan wasn't a new concept, who wants to unbolt seats? The fact that you could put those seats down into the floor of the minivan, to me, was revolutionary, because now it wasn't a mom-mobile. Now it was a utility vehicle. So I have sort of like some mixed opinions about minivans, the stigma, the design of it. They just don't look very cool, but I think they're going in the right direction.
So I think it's interesting that you brought up the all-wheel drive aspect with stow and go. You've got to go, I believe, all the way back to 2004, which was the last minivan we offered with all-wheel drive. In a little bit of a fun fact for you, what feature came out in 2005 that kind of was the reason that we stopped making all-wheel drive, and that would be stow and go seating. So back at that time, obviously, I wasn't on the project, but I can imagine the discussions that probably took place. Hey, a front wheel drive van is probably adequate for 90% of the people. Look at the functionality you get with the stow and go seating, right? And it brings up an interesting point. When we initially concepted Pacifica, we had tons of customers just like you that were like, hey, if that thing doesn't have all-wheel drive, it's just a non-starter for me. I live up in the snow belt. I live in Minnesota or Michigan, and I'm an SUV driver now because I need to have that functionality. So, when we concepted Pacifica, we kind of always knew that customer was going to be there, and we package protected for that all-wheel drive system. So even on our new 21, we were able to put all-wheel drive on the van and maintain stow and go. So we have both of those features in the car now. So, and we know the customers love them. So.
Now, how are you guys doing the all-wheel drive? Because there's another manufacturer that says that they're the only ones that are doing all-wheel drive. But are you guys, is the difference kind of, you guys are putting electric motors, leveraging the hybridness, or?
No, so ours is we have a mechanical system. We only offer all-wheel drive. We only offer all-wheel drive today on our gas applications.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's a mechanical system. Our hybrid is still a front wheel drive, and really the batteries for our hybrid go where the stow and go seats would go in the second row. So you can't offer stow and go, and thus we can't currently package a drive shaft through the middle of the van like we have on a gas car. That's why we don't have it on the hybrid today.
Gotcha.
No.
That's the unicorn, by the way. To be able to do a hybrid all-wheel drive with stow and go. Goals.
And a Hellcat.
And a vacuum
and a
and a
Hellcat.
chill pack, a chill box.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
You want a plug-in hybrid Hellcat, all-wheel drive, Pacifica.
Just take the Durango and make it a minivan. We're all good.
The SRT.
Yeah, with 700 horsepower.
Well, it's funny. I mean, if you look at the vans, some of the newer vans that are now coming out, we talked about the Carnival and even our 21 model year Pacifica. They are getting more masculine looking, more athletic, more SUV-like, right? And there's a reason for that. It's what the customers are into right now, right? So it's interesting what you can do with a two-box design. If you go back to say 15, 20 years ago, we had a lot more competitors out there. Everyone's van looked like the same van. It was, a two-box with sliding doors. But now if you look at what's out there today, everyone's got a pretty distinct style, if you will, right? And it's actually kind of surprising what they've been able to do with that two-box design with sliding doors.
So with that in mind, it seems like throughout the years, Chrysler has never shied away from the fact that this is a minivan and we're going to make the best damn minivan we can, whereas others have called it, a multi-purpose vehicle or multi-purpose utility or something like that. And now like Sienna, I really like the Sienna, but they're marketing it with no kids in it. It's a bunch of 20-year-old women and driving around to a club, and I'm like, yeah, no, I don't get that. Or is the market actually changing where, millennial women have a different view than the men and women we have on this show right now?
Well, now that all of us feel old.
I am a millennial.
Okay, well then Laura, are you hanging out in a minivan driving to the club and
yes, every day.
No.
Yeah, no. But I will say more and more people my age are driving minivans, and they really do like them. I don't think it's ever going to be for me, but I can see the appeal. We have a Toyota Sienna in our driveway right now, and it is, super easy to get in and out, to put a bunch of junk in the trunk.
A lot of storage.
A lot of storage. He's loving the fact that we can just open the buttons and the doors pop open without our kids slamming doors. So there is an appeal there, and it doesn't look ugly. That box shape of vans prior was rough, but these new ones, they have a decent look to them. They're not as ugly.
But there's no wood paneling on the side like the late 80s Dodge Caravan that I grew up on.
I bet you can find a magnet to add that.
Oh, I'm sure somewhere there's a wrap that I can get.
Yeah.
Well, here's something that I've been seeing a lot. I'm sure you guys have too. The trends with SUVs, and I'm saying this in defense of minivans now. When you look at a lot of the modern SUVs, whether it's the Mazda, the CX-9, we're talking the larger ones. We're talking like the Kia Telluride, the Hyundai Palisade, the Volvo. All across the board, the larger SUVs you'll find are now configuring these 3-row vehicles with captain's chairs in that second row. And so, I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to capture that spirit of what people like about minivans. And when I drive them, I'm like, God, I don't want to like this, but it's so spacious and convenient. And so I think that the SUVs are so popular in this country. And I think that they are probably taking some design cues from minivans. So, Brian, I don't know if you think that like that's something that you guys have to compete with now, SUVs that are trying to be like minivans.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Even if you look at a lot of the SUVs on the road today, right? If you could imagine those with instead of conventional doors with sliding doors, a lot of them would look just like a minivan, right? So I agree with you 100%. I think that versatility is really what the customer wants, but it's the it's just getting over that whole moniker, right, that comes along with a van, and it's very polarizing. Some people think, oh no, that's nothing, but like James was saying in the beginning, there's some people out there that are just like, oh, I wouldn't be caught dead in a van. This is crazy. So,
but you know what I think we're leaving out of this conversation is there are two phenomenons that I'm in Southern California, so sometimes I'm in a bubble, but I do think that this is happening all over the place. And number one is the whole van life phenomenon, right? Like there are people who in COVID just dropped out and decided to go live in their van. I have a 14-year-old daughter that all she talks about is how she wants to get her driver's license so she can get a van and move to Oregon and never talk to anybody ever again, right? So that's number one. And
I don't think that's the kind of van she's probably talking about.
Well,
Just
I don't know.
saying.
She does love the Pacifica.
The VW Microbus version 2.0.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Someday.
most of the conversions I've seen have been like Mercedes Sprinters,
Of course, Sprinter vans, and those sales are way up, and minivans are still only 2% of the market. But also, if you take a large SUV and you add a third row, you cannot compare that performance to the lower center of gravity of a van. A Pacifica just often drives better. I was just driving up to the snow, and the last time I drove up, I was in a Chrysler Pacifica, and this time I was in a very much a mom SUV. The SUV was definitely not better, and I thought about it the whole ride up. I was like, that vehicle just drives better. I don't care that this has a third row. I don't care that this may like be considered maybe sexier, but the van just drove better. So I think there still is that stigma, but I do think that whole van life phenom and even the whole man van, sprinter van thing can help change that mentality. And really, I know that the Sprinter is an off-road vehicle very often, the way that people are configuring them, but they're also doing that with transit vans and other really utilitarian vans. So these things I think are starting to merge a little bit, and that might change the whole perception forever.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's even the van culture group with the tuner guys that are doing a lot of unique customizations on vans and minivans, and so yeah, there's it's almost like we're getting ready for a renaissance, if you will, on vans. It's kind of where I think I think we're seeing the Kia's bringing the Carnival.
Yes.
Years ago, we had tons of competitors, right? Then we went down to like 3 people were making them, and now we're seeing a lot more people getting back in the game. And I'll tell you, if you want to see something really cool, take a couple of minutes, go on Google and look at the minivans that are offered in China, and just take a look at some of the vans that these guys are making over there. It's pretty cool. So I think there's we're kind of in that dichotomy, if you will, between SUV and minivan, and who's going to win that battle, right? We started off years ago. It was you had a full-size sedan was your family car, right? And then, like Aaron was saying, you moved to station wagons, and that was the big thing. And then it was the minivan, right? And as of late, it's been the SUV, but I still think there's a battle going on. Is it the minivan or the SUV? What is that family vehicle? So
I feel like the crossover vehicles are pushing that, though, because like we've always been large, full-size, extra full-size SUV people, biggest pickup trucks you can find, because we live in the middle of the country in Colorado.
We tow a lot.
And we tow a lot. And for us, we actually traded in last year my Tahoe and got a crossover SUV type of car. and I think that those also play a role, because there are things about it that are very much like this minivan, that have those features like the captain's chairs, but they're also pushing that third row seat in. I think it handles better in the snow than my SUVs ever did. And yeah, I mean, it's still snowing here. It's April 20th, and we just had 6 inches of snow last night. So,
well, I would say that kind of to Brian's point and to yours, Laura, is when you see vehicles that were like the Dodge Journey, that was the minivan that wasn't a minivan. So it was selling to people that didn't want a minivan, but in all respects, it basically was. And now it's discontinued because I think the dividing line is very clear now. You either have an SUV or you don't. That seems to be where people are going right now. I live in Wyoming, and we had the same snowstorm that Colorado did, and I had an all-wheel drive minivan that drove right through it, no issues. I had a choice. I could have driven a giant pickup truck with four-wheel drive or an all-wheel drive minivan, and I took the minivan because on snow and ice, lower center of gravity beats every time.
Yeah, I would add on to that too, kind of what Amelia was saying, that the new minivans actually perform really, really well. I mean, I don't have kids, but I had an absolute blast driving the Pacifica. I had the Pacifica hybrid last year, and it was really peppy, and it handled in curves way better than I would have expected, and certainly better than almost any certainly any three-row SUV in its class. I mean, there's obviously there's some Cadillacs and some higher end luxury vehicles that cost $90,000 that perform pretty well too, but $40,000 more than your vehicle. So I think it's awesome that it's not just a boring transport kind of car anymore, and that's not, and you're doing a lot more than just dressing it up, making it look pretty.
Yeah. I mean, years ago, it was minivans really were based off the old full-size van and getting something that could fit into a garage easier, right? So they didn't have all the creature features for the second row. It was just kind of really basic, utility vehicle for somebody to haul people around. And you look at the ones that we have now, it's like, it's interesting to work on the Pacifica because we really have two customers. You have the guy or gal who buys the vehicle, and then we have the kids in the back second row that interact with all the Uconnect theater and games and stuff. And we got to talk to both of those customers because it goes into the whole design of the full package. So from that aspect, it's even kind of cool. So, and it's probably one of the few cars I've spent a fair amount of time working on other vehicles within the fleet. And it's definitely the only one where, you get a lot of customer voices from young kids and people that spend time in the second row.
So I think that's an interesting idea, and James, you kind of touched on it, is the idea of luxury, right? So the Pacifica has gotten more and more luxurious as it's evolved, right? And it's been able to command a higher price because that back seat doesn't necessarily feel like it's the back seat, like it's punishment, right? Like when I went on my road trip with my family in the Pacifica, I remember my husband was in the back seat and I was like, you want to come to, and he's like, no, I'm good back here. No, it's good. Like everybody was very happy back there. But the Carnival is a vehicle that takes that to another level. It's almost a livery vehicle, right? You've got the seats that recline back there, and it's supposed to, I think traditionally in Korea and in India, this is something that a driver is supposed to drive, right? Mm-hmm. You're supposed to be driven in the Carnival. And so I wonder if you foresee that you think the Pacifica will get even more luxurious, that there's sort of a next level minivan coming up out there.
The Bentley minivan coming in 2025.
No, it's definitely a great question. I can't comment on future applications for us, but it's an interesting thing that you point out. The whole driver aspect. That's my comment earlier about looking at vehicles in China. That's exactly minivans there are really limousines, right? So big CEOs of companies, and they have drivers and they drive the people around in the car. And who knows, with autonomy coming down the road, right? you might say that maybe there's a thread there, right?
So we have a minivan that we own that's like our family vehicle, and the back seats recline and have feet rests, and there's a TV back there, and so I'm the driver, the chauffeur for 3 kids in that thing all the time.
So when I do car reviews, I always look at it from the driver perspective, and I do a backseat review for that reason, because especially with the larger vehicles, you want those comforts for, if it's going to be little kids, it needs to be convenient for the parents. If it's going to be for teenagers, you're going to want the USB ports, you're going to want, climate control or whatever. One thing that I'd love to hear from everyone, and especially Laura and Jason, since you're kind of middle America driving the big vehicles, and I think like the coastal states are the ones that are usually thinking about fuel economy. We also hear there are a lot of trends for companies that are introducing electrification strategies, and Stellantis, ask your doctor about Stellantis. Come on, worst name ever. The whole Stellantis family of vehicles, you don't necessarily think fuel economy. It's not really top of mind when we're talking about, Dodge in particular, or Jeep, even though I know Jeep has electrification. But where do you see that playing in? Is that something that people like? And Laura, I mentioned you specifically because you're like, I need utility, I need towing capacity. That doesn't always go hand in hand with a hybrid or an electric vehicle. Is that something that Chrysler's thinking about? Is that something for those of you that are kind of tapped into consumers that you think people care? I mean, it's something I personally care about, but I'd like to hear what other people think about that and how that plays into minivan strategy.
Go ahead. No, you.
Jason got things to say, I can tell.
He's naturally like a little bit quiet, but then he'll speak up. Okay, I think here in kind of the central area, we have so much to do land-based with ATVing and camping and all that. And I know people do that on like the coasts. We're aware of that. But I think, everywhere around us, and again, we're in the country, is camper storage places. And I don't know that we see that as we're going places. So for us, and I think here specifically in our area, the towing capacity very much matters, because people aren't buying, like there was a run on campers when COVID happened. So maybe in your guys' states it was vans, but like in Colorado, you couldn't find a camper.
No, that was everywhere.
Okay.
Everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. And the amount of towing that is necessary, I don't think could be supported by an electric vehicle. We had to rebuild his entire truck transmission and engine just to make sure that it would have the capability to pull our camper. And when we are buying vehicles, we have a minimum tow capacity that it must be able to pull, or we don't even consider it. And we know a lot of our friends in this area are looking for the same things. Like towing is a big deal, and your car has to be able to handle it.
Then I will make sure I modify it to get better fuel economy and can handle the towing and.
Yeah.
Well, if you're towing 10,000 pounds though, I don't, and I think your trailer is a little bit heavier than that, but I mean, I don't think you're ever going to look at a minivan and hauling that. Because you're not even looking at just like you could put the the Hellcat engine in the front of the Pacifica, and it's the suspension's not going to be able to handle it.
Oh, and I had to rebuild suspension to handle it also.
I'll just put a lift kit and put some 35s on that Pacifica. And
It sounds like we have a project. Let's go.
Look, if you need
That could
someone,
be a good project.
yeah,
If
you need-
only we knew an
Check that out.
engineer from a major auto manufacturer who could help with both advice, guidance, and parts. Who do we know? Do you guys know anybody?
I don't know, but if you can put the fifth wheel hitch on top of the car, so we can just like back in, pull out, and go, we're in.
They made a Volkswagen like that, I'm pretty sure.
Somewhere on Reddit, I'm sure somebody's done that.
I think we've all seen the same meme of the little bug pulling.
Yes.
And by the way, Brian, I know you have to log out at some point, so I didn't know if you needed to leave it. You're welcome to stay as long as you want, but I want to be mindful of your other appointment. Yeah,
no big deal. I do need to run off, but I wanted to leave you guys with a text that one of my buddies sent me because I think it's something good to maybe discuss, and so I'll leave this with you. So this was a tweet that one of my buddies saw the other day, and it was quote, "The kids who drove minivans in high school are now the backbone of our society." So I thought it took me a couple of minutes to think about what exactly did that guy, what does he mean, right? So I'm going to leave you guys with that. You can debate it. It was great chatting with you. And yeah, by all means, if you guys want to do it again, reach out and we can definitely do it.
Well, for what it's worth, before you leave, I am that dude. I had a Dodge Grand Caravan with the seats removed that ended up being a party wagon. Looking back at it, I am so thankful nobody died. But we put a mattress in the back. Before anybody thinks of it as a sexual thing, it was more that it was just comfortable. But we
high school.
It was actually in college. I had it in high school too, but during college, I went to Penn State, Altoona, which is about 45 minutes an hour south of main campus. So on football weekends, it basically was like, here, give me $10, $15, I'll load you in the back. And we just, way more people than we had seatbelts. But the seatbelts didn't matter because there were no seats either. But so to think that I'm a pillar of society now, or whatever you said,
the backbone.
It's terrifying.
We are so screwed. So thank you, Brian, for joining us. This has been awesome. You're more than welcome to join us anytime you want, whether we're talking about Pacifica or talking about other topics too. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks. Nice meeting all you guys.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Brian.
Wow.
Backbone of society.
And we thought
I wouldn't
millennials
want
were
that
a problem. My God.
Yeah, I wouldn't want that responsibility.
And sorry for ragging on millennials there. You guys are so awesome. I didn't. No, I'm just going to stop there. I can't think of the right way to say it without getting myself in trouble. But
James, it's okay. I'm at the very tip of the millennials. I'm the very last of the next generation or whatever. We're fine.
Okay. So anyhow, earlier in the chat we
talk about utility because we kept talking about that, and there's more to utility than just towing. So our minivan, I've moved all the seats and done all that stuff that you do. We have a Kia, so I've pushed the middle row forward and dropped the back seats into their hole, and I've hauled sheets of lumber and other things in it, which is one of the reasons why I thoroughly believe that the minivan is the most utilitarian vehicle you can get, because we have a tow hitch on ours. It's rated for 3,500 pounds. I've towed one trailer with it. It had, 350, 400 pounds in it. It was not heavy. We use the trailer hitch because you can add on to the back of the van. And now you've got a place to put your bicycles. You got a place to put your camping cooler and all that stuff. You got a place and then you've got a roof rack, and then you've got the interior. When I remove it, I can literally put sheets of plywood in. That's something that a lot of people don't think about, but minivans are extremely utilitarian with tons of uses, and now they have vacuums built into them.
And what kind do you have, Aaron? What kind of minivan do you have?
We have a Kia Sedona. We bought it about 2 years ago. We have the SXL, so it has all the luxury treatment inside with all the extra USBs and those reclining seats and all that good stuff.
Are you
Yep.
trying to impress us with your minivan?
I'm really impressed with your minivan.
I got the swagger van.
I do.
Dude, that's a sweet
Yeah,
minivan.
right.
Whose car is it though? Whose car is it? Is it your car or is it your wife's car? Like, how does that break down?
She drives.
Well,
it most
he's
of the
married,
time.
so it's all his
I
wife's.
drive my press car.
That's true.
But we use it a lot for road tripping and things, and I do almost all the driving for things like that.
Okay.
But she drives it as her daily go to work and back car, because I get, manufacturers just give me a car to drive, so I don't have any reason to buy a different one.
I do have to say though, like, I am shocked at the price point of these because they give you a heck of a lot more bang for your buck
They do.
in a van than they are giving you for an SUV. Like our luxury SUVs, that's like the only type of SUVs we would buy. We're like the top of the line. We're pushing $90,000, and this dang fully loaded, limited, whatever version is $55,000, and it has every feature that I would have
That's the
ever.
thing.
You're talking about the Sienna, right? In the Platinum.
Yeah,
Toyota Sienna,
yeah.
I
The
just
Toyota.
had that last week, and it was about 55 with delivery.
Right.
And I did video and just said I would compare this to any luxury make you want to point to, in terms of especially price point. So I've driven $70,000 SUVs that weren't as good.
I do have to admit, the drive is nice.
The drive is nice, right?
It's smooth, it's comfortable, it's roomy.
The only thing I didn't like about that vehicle is a Toyota problem.
Is that it's gushy. You get no feel from the steering wheel because it's all electric assist. You get nothing from that, and then it never wants to get in a hurry ever.
No, it's not that fast.
245 horsepower, maybe, but you're gonna have to have the wind behind you in a downhill to really actually go.
I feel like the Pacifica was much peppier.
Oh yeah,
Especially in the plug-in hybrid.
Yeah.
Right?
Even though I don't think the numbers reflect that entirely, but it definitely felt much sportier, much more like I'm not compromising. But the one thing I didn't like about I love the Sienna, by the way, so I can't really say anything bad about it. But the one thing I didn't like about it that I don't understand why Toyota didn't do better is the passenger front seat isn't as adjustable. Like it felt like it was just it should have at least been an option to adjust. But that's kind of a Toyota thing. I don't know why Toyota doesn't put a similar quality seat in for the passenger as they do for the driver.
it's the same reason that we have captain's chairs in the back instead of benches now. It's because that middle seat is always the chump seat, and I think Toyota thinks of the front passenger as the chump. That you should be driving. What are you doing, wasting your time?
You may be true. I just figured we're talking about how great it is, and the Sienna is a great vehicle. I'm really thrilled that I don't know that it's necessarily innovative, but they took a lot of features that everybody else has been doing and made it better, even though they've been hit hard by the parts crisis. Like I know the one thing I thought was really, really cool is the vacuum cleaner should be attached to the front center console, but instead of in the back like the Quest was and some other ones are. But unfortunately, production wise, they haven't been able to make it that way because they can't get the parts. But when they do, I think that's a huge innovation.
There's a vacuum cleaner on this thing.
In the version that you have, which very well may be the same version that I had that rotated to the Denver press fleet, and maybe the same one that Aaron had.
It's green.
Oh, okay. Well, you guys probably had the same one. I had a silverish brown one, but the version that was intended to come out at launch, that'll probably happen. I'm guessing they'll probably at this point make it a 2022. Will have a 2-mode chill box in the center console and a vacuum cleaner in the center console. So instead of having to reach in the back and have it connected to the tailgate, you can actually, like, if you have kids or adults or whoever's in the middle seat that spills their Cheerios or spills their pixie
Goldfish
dust, I don't
crackers.
know, whatever you're eating, just clean it up right there. Don't wait till mom or dad parks the car in the driveway to clean it up.
I love the chill box. I think the chill box is great.
Yeah, I'm
have
surprised Toyota hasn't used that more because it's been in the Land Cruiser forever and they haven't
it
put
has.
it everywhere else.
And I thought Lexus had it in theirs, which is part of Toyota.
The GX, they do. They have it in the GX, yeah. But then you've got the whole Toyota interface that just makes me want to kill someone. I can't do
I
it.
will say they have improved that, at least in this Sienna. It's not prettier. It still looks 10 years old in terms of the screen design, the icons and stuff, but it's much faster and way more intuitive to use than it has been before.
I think you're just used to Toyota. I think you just got used to taking your bad medicine.
No, because I get into a Chrysler
Hey, we're
or
long-time Toyota owners over here. We just put our 20-year-old Corolla in the shop.
Oh, no way. That's awesome.
I won't let you
Corolla,
get
my
rid of
first
it.
car.
How many
Time to
miles
let
do
it
you have on
go.
it?
240.
That's rad. That's
It's
cool.
a
You get to
fucking
300.
Yeah. Our
Yeah.
goal is to get it to 1 million and then, have Toyota give us a new one.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's a great idea.
Spoken like bloggers. Yeah, we'll just run to the ground and then have a manufacturer give us a new one.
Yeah. It's a plan, right?
How old are your kids?
11 and 8.
They just had birthdays.
Well, that's a little bit far to try to stretch it to 15, 16, but
No, we're
I don't think it
I'm
is.
just going to put on jacks and just let it run.
I'm assuming your son is going to be driving our minivan to prom because our kids are 10, 11, and 12, and so I assume 4 or 5 years from now, when he's ready to go to prom, he can drive the minivan, and we'll buy something else. It'll still be under
party
warranty.
van.
That's the amazing part.
so we've talked a little. Obviously, we talked about the Pacifica. We talked a little bit about the Sienna. I know that we have the Kia Carnival coming out. Have any of you guys been to? Has there been a preview event or a launch event yet for that?
No, they've been delivering them to certain bloggers and stuff. I saw one guy got 2 of them on his driveway today because they wanted to see the SX model and the regular one. But I'm not special with Kia, so.
Well, I think it'd be a really hard sell to have Guys Gab talking about the Kia Carnival.
Yeah. I'd tell you right a few weeks ago. That was nice.
Although I know you would totally accept the trip to like Vail or something like that if they if they had a drive event for it.
Don't go to Vail.
I mean, after this conversation, I really want to drive it, actually. Like,
Me too.
the photos look good, and I remember seeing it when I was looking at an Indian Kia site for a random reason and being like, why don't we get that car here? And then they said they were going to get it here, and I kind of forgot about it. And it's just reminded me how much I want to drive it. So I'm going to harass someone tomorrow. I'll let you know.
So is it really those three? I asked Nissan if the Quest. You look on the Nissan rumor sites and they say that there's going to be a 2024 Quest, I think it is, but
yeah.
The Nissan people is like, no, we're not. Nothing I can say about it. So what else is coming out?
First.
Nissan should be saying something about something. They need something, I think.
I agree. I have a Leaf coming tomorrow, and I'm kind of like, well, it's the same Leaf that's been out for like 5 years, and I'm happy to do an Earth Day story about it because I really do love EVs, but I agree that Nissan really needs a halo, and the new Z is not it.
They just redid the Pathfinder though. And they're
I'm
excited
looking forward to that.
about
The new Pathfinder and the new Frontier should be really nice.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think back in the day.
I drove the new Rogue and I really liked it. They did a really good job.
I did too.
Yeah,
I was impressed with that car.
But back in the day, I think the Nissan Quest, at least I thought it was ugly on the outside, but from an interior perspective, I thought it was one of the most innovative minivans out there back in the day.
They were the first to have the vacuum cleaner, right?
I don't know.
That was Honda.
No,
It was Honda. Okay.
Yeah, that was Honda. Because you remember they came out with the vacuum the same year they had Judas Priest in their commercial with the backdrop. That was like I almost bought one just because they had Judas Priest.
Is the Odyssey still around, or is that has that gotten dropped?
It was just redone too.
Yeah,
but it's still ugly.
Wait a minute, you guys are talking about the Toyota Sienna like it's beautiful. That's one of the ugliest cars I've ever seen.
Yeah,
I
didn't
really
say
like
was
it.
pretty.
Really?
See, this is what it comes down to for me. It's that aesthetic. Minivans don't look cool. I mean, I don't know how it is where you guys are, but probably the number one minivan that I see driving around, and I think probably it's true in terms of market sales, is the Honda Odyssey. And it looks like something with a really wide ass, you know. It's just that big butt back there. It just doesn't look cool.
I am. It's almost all Toyota Siennas and new generation Chrysler Pacificas because all-wheel drive.
That makes
you have
sense.
the Sienna because of all-wheel drive, and now the Pacifica. I see a lot of all-wheel drive models for the Pacifica here.
The Pacifica outsells all the other SUVs. I know that is for sure. So I looked at the minivan. So it's Pacifica, Odyssey, Sienna, Dodge Caravan, Kia Sedona. That was 2021.
Okay.
Well, and the Pacifica has 24% of the market share.
Yeah, but I think that's
crazy.
It gets ignored because it's a Mercedes, but Mercedes, their minivan is really well done. They don't call it a minivan. They don't call it that, but it's a great little drive, and I believe they have all-wheel drive for it now. And now you can get it with a tent built in. So any of you, your daughter,
they just don't stock them, Aaron. They don't stock them, and brand awareness for that is so low in this country, and they're not cheap. I mean, what you get for your money compared to a Honda or a Chrysler,
right? Well, in the end, Mercedes is still thinking of those as commercial vehicles, rather than passenger vehicles, and so it's kind of hard to make that transition.
I got to be honest. I just had to Google it because I don't know about this.
Okay.
We looked at it at Chicago.
Yeah. Well, I did a video on it, Phaedra.
That was the one where they converted it to like a camper.
Yes, they had
them that way now. Yeah, and then right next to it was the one with the "This isn't beer, we swear" dispensers on the side.
But is it beer?
Yes,
it was because
it's very much beer
on that thing.
Yeah.
It was O'Doul's though, so it's okay. You know, I'm looking forward to going back to the Chicago Auto Show at some point. That's always been a great show. But as far as we talked about a little bit earlier about electrification and such, what's really holding back, doing an EV minivan? Is it just because of weight? But it seems like if you're doing
Buzz,
trucks,
baby, ID Buzz, it's coming.
The what buzz?
The ID Buzz. It's the VW electric van. I mean, that's what's coming. Sure, it's going to be the microbus electrified, but I think to your point, that's the big question: nothing is stopping anyone. It's whether or not they can sell it. So if there's anybody that can sell it, I think VW can, because they can make it into this cool retro thing. They don't necessarily have to do a stow and go, and so they can put the batteries, the batteries in the floor, so they don't have to make the seats removable that way. You can just pull them out. I think it's gonna be great. I'm excited about it.
I think that'll actually do really well, kind of right on the millennial thing that you talked about earlier with your daughter, that vans are cool, not necessarily minivans, but vans, and kind of the sense of freedom that it represented. It's the same way it did for my parents on the side. My parents, when I grew up, we didn't, but they had a VW microbus, and I slept in a hammock, from the roof. As they we lived in San Francisco, and we went camping, and I don't think my parents were necessarily hippies, but they were damn close to from the peach tuxedos to going to school at Berkeley.
They were hippies.
Yeah, but my dad went to Berkeley on a GI Bill. He was an officer in the Air Force coming off of Vietnam. So it's like, you're there just adjacent.
Yeah.
How long was his hair?
Honestly, I don't know if I've seen any pictures from when he was there, but he had the big porn star mustache, and He did not.
even better
I don't think he
than
ever had.
being a
He
hippie.
did not have long hair because he was still a reservist in the Air Force. So he still had to maintain, that level of stuff. But God, I hope he's not
Well,
watching. So
I think going back to electrification, though, I think it's just that segment of the market demands the utility of the minivan, and it's either going to be a minivan or it's going to be an SUV for them. They aren't thinking, but I really want great fuel economy. It's really, I've had some of my readers and viewers say, I need something for 8 passengers. They don't care how much it costs. They don't care the fuel economy. They just need something that serves their needs. And I think that is honestly been a big part of the minivan market and the SUV market too. And I think we're just getting to the point where, we were talking about competition. Competition is what's going to drive innovation in that space. And I think once people see that they have a choice where this minivan has all-wheel drive, that's a benefit. This minivan is a hybrid, that's a benefit. And I think you'll start to see people making different choices when they have different things to think about.
Well, and part of the problem is there's only so much you can do with a brick. So a minivan is basically shaped like a brick. SUVs are basically shaped like bricks. There's only so much you can do for that. So if you look at the Sienna hybrid that we've talked about, the fuel economy on that versus the gas version, the hybrid's only gaining about 3 miles a gallon on the highway.
Right.
It's not that impressive. With the Chrysler Pacifica, I think you can easily break 40 miles to the gallon, but that's a plug-in hybrid, and you pay a big premium to get a battery.
But sometimes when you buy the plug-in hybrid versus the internal combustion regular engine, you can get the discount, right? So you get the tax incentives, and that sometimes makes up for it. And then there is that little torque burst that we talked about that does make it handle better.
Where there's taxes.
Yeah,
That's why you live out there. You don't pay taxes. You're off the grid, man. We know.
Yeah, come
You
and
don't
get my
talk to the
taxes.
man. Our taxes.
But I wish they would make the plug-in hybrid instead of being like 20 miles. And I don't know how much the range is on the Pacifica, but I know like on the 4xe or 4xe, the new Wrangler, it's 20 miles, which essentially is all but worthless. But like if you had a plug-in hybrid for the Pacifica, for instance, that had a 60-mile range or a 100-mile range, it would be really practical at that point because you'd be able to cover road trips if you needed it to. But if you're doing a round town kind of travel, like back and forth to school and soccer and that kind of stuff, no parent is going to do more than 100 miles in a day and be able to charge up overnight.
I think I used to feel the same way. I used to think like 20 miles. What's that going to get you? I recently bought a plug-in hybrid, and I think it's about 18 to 20 pure electric. You can do it pure electric, and I'm telling you that when I am just running around town in all electric mode, which again, not to stereotype the mom mobile, but let's face it, that's what minivans are. Running the kids to school, running to the grocery store. You could do that on all electric and really, really extend the fuel economy. I don't think, to Aaron's point, I don't think you'll get that with a standard hybrid, but I think with a plug-in hybrid, I still think that there's a big, Amelia and I have talked about this before. She's coming from California where a plug-in hybrid is like, well, yeah. But for a lot of other people, I think people are like, I don't know how to do a plug-in. I don't know what that means. I think that there is still that big, obstacle to overcome of like, what does it really mean and what are the benefits that you can really get as a car consumer?
I think that can be overcome really, really quickly. I mean, we just did a road trip with the Mustang Mach-E, and I have an EV except for this month, maybe once a year, so I kind of forget stuff in between. But I felt like having it away from my home base for 3 days or 4 days, where I had to actually understand how it did. By the end of the weekend, we were pros. Like we understood, the shift in charging, the shift in how you drive and how you use it, and the ways to optimize stuff. So I think that if there was a concerted effort to actually train and promote the ease of use with EVs, as opposed to people talking about the range anxiety and the negative stuff, that we could shift that pretty quickly.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. You said you took 3 days, and by the time you were done 3 days, you were like, oh, okay, I get it now. That's something the average consumer doesn't get the opportunity to do.
Right.
And you're someone that works in cars. So I still think that that's a big hurdle for a lot of companies to overcome.
Oh, it's certainly a huge hurdle, but I feel like with the amount of marketing that's being done, that there's ways that, so for instance, just as an example, I don't know how many millions of dollars it would cost, but if Stellantis tomorrow said, okay, you know what, we're going to do a really big push. EVs is the future. So we're going to push out, 1,000, plug-in hybrid, with the extended range battery Pacificas to the auto industry. If all of us started talking about it tomorrow, talking about how the fact that it was a positive thing and how easy it was, and not doing necessarily reviews of the car, but reviews of how you used the car, right. I think that conversation could shift things on a national basis.
Well, it has. I just wrote about this last week about how the consumer conception of EVs has changed. Like range anxiety used to be their number one concern, and their number one concern now is cost. It's no longer range anxiety, because they note that people are more educated, number one, and two, there have been major infrastructure changes, right? I mean, Rivian's going to put out a huge charging network. Jeep is going to be putting out charging for the 4xe at the major trailheads, so Rubicon, Tahoe, and Moab. So we've got a lot. The car companies are working really hard, and they kind of have to, because Biden signed the Paris Climate Agreement, so we've got major goals that we need to hit by 2030.
There's also a buttload of money.
Well, that's the thing. It's like they're going to have to pay incredible fines if they don't sell enough EVs. So I think there is a big push towards this. But I also think that they thought that plug-in hybrids were going to be training wheels for people to get used to EVs, and then eventually people would start buying EVs. But that didn't really happen, because, to Aaron's point, the price incentives just weren't there. So I think that we lost a couple of years because of that. But it's just kind of interesting to see what those shifts in perception are.
Yeah, if I can jump in here. So, you and James are both in California, where the charging infrastructure is a completely different animal than it is in the rest of the country. And me and James had this conversation too, because I had a Mach-E over Christmas, and it was a complete disaster because our charging infrastructure is total crap. And I spent 3 days over Christmas in a parking lot in 30-degree weather charging for hours on end. And I think if you don't own a Tesla right now and you don't live in California, it's still, a little too early. So it's real, exciting for the brands to talk about EV this, EV that, but I think we're still probably 4 or 5 years away from real capacity for the average person to be able to handle an EV. And I was going to bring this up earlier. I also wonder if there's a gender shift, whereas a guy might be more geared towards hey, EVs, cool, tech, this, that, and the other. And a female, a mom, is just I just want to take my kids to soccer practice. I don't have time to deal with this shit. I don't want to go to a charging station and sit there for 20 minutes. I've got stuff to do. So what do you guys think about that?
I think it's the other way around.
Really?
I would agree with her. And then at the same time, I would point out that, one, I think 5 years to having a charging infrastructure, that's exceedingly optimistic. I live in Cheyenne, the biggest city in Wyoming, which I know that's not saying much, but it is the largest city in Wyoming. I have one option for a charging station that's not Tesla, and that charging station is at the Harley-Davidson dealership. And
I'm amazed that the Harley dealerships are.
We have a charging station at the Harley dealership too.
It's not even a level 2 charger, so I might as well just be plugging into my wall. And I have driven several EVs, and I was really amazed. I drove a Kia Niro EV from here. I fully charged it at my house, so it claimed to have 160 miles of range or whatever it was. And then I drove from here over the mountain to Laramie and all the way back in terrible winter conditions. and that's roughly 100 miles, but it's about 2,000 feet in altitude change. And it was that ate all but 20 miles of that charge, and that was because I coasted down the mountain home.
Jesus.
Because I was so afraid of being stranded with my kids, because we also had the car loaded with people. So I was impressed that it got that far, but at the same time, I was thinking this is not ready for prime time. Where I live, and where Laura and Jason live, and where a large portion of the country lives, it's 100 miles to anywhere. And you have to be able to go there. And then you add in anything like extra passengers, towing, any of that stuff. And suddenly your fun little road and track road trip in a Mach-E, where you decide to go, oh, we're gonna road trip 400 miles. And then you realize that it took them 3 days to do 400 miles is not realistic. I drive from here to Utah, which is about 450 miles. I do that in 9 hours. I'm not going to be stopping. My kids aren't going to want to stop. We're not going to be pulling in and spending 2 hours to put extra charge in all the way across the board, assuming there's even anywhere to do it, and there isn't. So that's just not realistic.
So Aaron has strong feelings, is what I'm hearing.
His insight is legit.
I have a problem with EVs. I have a problem with people that think that that's got to happen tomorrow, because I
think that's really eye-opening to hear your perspective, because I live in the DC area, which I live in Maryland. It's a commuter state. You're primarily going to and from a city. And of course, with the nation's capital, they do have a lot of charging stations there. So you drive there, you charge up, you drive home. So I think that's actually a really, really good point. We lost our host.
Bye, James.
Yeah.
Free for all.
Phaedra, I live in a very suburban, populous town, but our charging infrastructure just kind of sucks. I live in Jersey, outside of Philadelphia.
Okay.
I found myself in a Target parking lot 15 miles away to charge, because it was the only fast charger within like 60 miles.
Really?
Yeah, and this
That's
was after
surprising.
Ford, and even my Ford dealership doesn't have a fast charger.
Where?
So, I live in a condo, so I can't plug in at home, and even if I lived in a house, I don't have a charger installed. So plugging into a wall wouldn't help me either. This is where the whole frustration kind of came in. And then I was also dealing with
EVs is we have a large portion of this country that does not have a garage, that does not have dedicated parking. That's and you can't fix that by marketing how great your Tesla is right before it smashes into an immovable object because you
Oh my God, Aaron, that's another show. Don't get me started. I'm so mad about that. Oh my God. But the only way this is going to work is if a major fuel station, right, Shell or Chevron or Arco, signs up a charge point. Like, that's the only thing that's going to work. And they had this issue in Australia and Israel, and because of the expanses between locations in Australia, and they were trying to get people to buy AVs. So this company called Better Place had this idea of making it so that you drove in and they would swap out your battery, and then you drive out. And ultimately it failed for a multitude of reasons that you can easily imagine. But it's exactly to your point, Aaron, like when I started test driving EVs maybe 6 years ago, I was stuck in many a parking lot with a Tesla, with a VW, e-Golf. But since then, every new construction in California, well, in Los Angeles County, is they have to. Every parking lot, every apartment building has to have a charging station. But obviously, we're a super greeniac, weird leftist state, so that's a different story.
But I want to get into the question of how much new construction versus demand for housing there is there, because one of the things that happens is you can mandate all of these things, but then people stop building because it costs too much.
Sure, but they're still renovating, right? They're still renovating, particularly parking, and also federal buildings. Like anytime you go to a city hall or a DMV or anything like that, they all have charging stations.
But we're in Denver. Denver's
We're outside Denver.
I mean, we're not too far outside of Denver. But I mean, we're very populous, a little bit more blue than red. And there's a big green push here. I mean, people are very passionate about like keeping our mountains, you know, air quality great. And we just looked up charging stations, and the closest one to us is an hour drive away in every direction. And we live in the fastest growing city in the nation, with a populace in our city of over 100,000 people, which when I was a kid was only 5,000 people. So
that's amazing to me.
And we were like, I don't think I've ever seen a charging station. We've never seen them. Hold on. I'm gonna mute.
So yeah, this kind of conversation went off topic, but you know, there are some definitely EV growing pains. And I'm not an EV hater. My dad owns a Tesla and's had it for like 3 years. But I think in the conversations about EVs, I mean, you have Tesla, who was smart and built their own infrastructure, and someone can drive 1,000 miles without any problems, versus every other brand that you're at the mercy of all these disjointed charging networks that don't communicate with the car, that half the time don't work, that are way too slow because the number of fast chargers are really, really limited. And, you know, I think everyone's just glossing over that fact. I feel bad for people that are buying EVs and then learn the reality. I had a reader that bought a Mach-E. He was really excited. He waited 2 years for it. And he's like, everything you wrote in your article was exactly what I went through my first week with the car, and I wish I could return it now.
Yeah.
And I was like, you should have listened to you then.
To go back to minivans, there's a greatly diminishing return. The larger a vehicle gets, the larger the battery has to be to give it any kind of range. And then eventually you hit that point of diminishing returns where adding more battery isn't necessarily adding more range. And you have that with pickup trucks, minivans, crossover SUVs, any of those. There's a reason Tesla doesn't have a proper SUV. They have the Model X, but that's not really an SUV. That's it's the least utilitarian SUV I've seen in my life. So there's a reason for that. It's because to make it streamlined and to make it capable of getting the 300 odd miles of range they want, they have to make it that shape. And that doesn't fly when, like I said earlier, you're trying to push a brick. So any SUV that's properly designed, any minivan that's properly designed, and almost all crossovers, they're basically bricks with four wheels and a little spot for an engine up front. And there's only so much you can do aerodynamically for that.
What about the Hummer EV?
They don't care about that. It's a Hummer.
Yeah, I think the Hummer EV cares about EV power as much as it cared about gasoline power back, 10, 15 years ago.
True.
But crab walk. Okay. Rawr, but 1,000 pound-foot of torque. Rawr.
I can't wait to drive it.
Oh, I can't wait to drive it either.
And I have an H3T Alpha. So there.
Oh, wow.
Well,
that's how green I am.
I'm waiting for the first Billy Bob video of one of those getting a whole bunch of air and then blowing the axles on the landing.
It'll be great. It'll be great. I'm here for that.
Motors go.
Well, this has been an awesome conversation. We try to keep it to an hour, but someone's got ambulances and fire trucks and stuff.
Wow.
But I would love to continue this conversation. Maybe we talk about EVs. Maybe we talk about trucks next time. We kind of threw this team together, but I really like the dynamic. So I'd like to see everybody come back for something. So let's wrap the show up and plan for another episode, and we'll figure out what that topic is.
Thanks.
Sounds good. Sounds great. Thanks, James. Good to see you guys.
Thank you guys.